Hi guys! Now let me start out by saying I am well aware that the zombie apocalypse is not super kid-friendly. This isn't a review to see if The Last of Us is okay for your 6-year-old to watch. I think we all know the answer there. But if you're trying to decide if your 12 or 13-year-old should watch the show, then stay tuned to see exactly what this show is about. If you're new here, at OK for Kids, I review games, shows, singers, and more to see if they're okay for your kids. We'll cover any concerns you might have around profanity, sex, violence, and more. Before we dive in, please take a moment to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. The Last of Us is a new TV show this year based on a 2013 video game. The show revolves around Joel, a smuggler who's trying to get Ellie, a 14-year-old girl, out of a quarantine zone and across the United States. Meanwhile, the country has been ravaged for the last 20 years by a fungal infection that turns people into zombies. Ellie is one of the few who are immune from infection, so she is highly sought after to be tested to find a cure. Before I say anything more, let me also say there may be some spoilers ahead. Also, there's some pretty graphic content in the clips from the show. We can get cost out of the way first. This show is only available if you have HBO or HBO Max. I always considered HBO to be one of the really premium services, but I just looked online and the version with ads is only $10 a month, so that's really not bad. I'll set this to low. Let's talk about profanity next, because there is definitely profanity on this show. I love when people do the hard work here for me. I found a stat online that there are 225 uses of the F word in Season 1. Now, I wasn't planning on counting them myself, but I'm glad someone else took the time to do it. So that gives you a good idea of what you're in for. Now, to be fair, if I was involved in some sort of zombie apocalypse, I'm sure I'd be swearing a lot too. Nonetheless, I'll set this one to medium high. Now let's move on to sex. There isn't a lot of sexual content here, but there are a few things to mention. There's some nudity, specifically where you see a naked dead woman, but it isn't sexual in nature. There are both heterosexual and gay relationships, but again, nothing overtly sexual is shown with any of them. Next, a zombie kisses a human, but that was more grotesque than sexual. And later, there's an attempted rape of one of the characters. That scene is also pretty damn violent and unpleasant to watch. But since that was more violence than sex, I'm still going to set the sex rating to low. But now we do need to talk about violence. It'd be hard to have a movie based on this video game without it being very graphic and violent. So we kind of knew what we were getting into, but yeah, it's really violent. In addition to your typical zombie attacks, the remaining humans often turn on each other. There's plenty of shooting and stabbing amongst the non-zombies as well. And don't think just because some character plays a prominent role and you've grown attached to them that they're safe. They will kill off just about anyone in this show. There's also just the scariness factor of the visuals of the zombies, so I'm going to go ahead and put this all the way up. The last one is the annoying rating, meaning how annoyed will you be as a parent to have this show on in your house? Well, as with many other HBO programs, this show is extremely well produced. It's well acted, the storylines are compelling, and it's all around high quality content. That being said, as we saw earlier, it is wildly violent and pretty darn scary. If you do let a kid who's on the younger side watch it, there's a good possibility they'll get scared. Heck, I'm a full-grown adult and I was pretty scared. So definitely use your judgment on how your kid reacts to scary things before considering this show. Other than that though, like I said, it's a very well-made show, so it's not particularly annoying. I'll set this one to low. Okay, so that's all the ratings. As I said up front, we know this isn't for little kids. It's rated TVMA for obvious reasons. However, one thing I fall back on when it comes to violence is how realistic the setting is. While I guess it isn't out of the question, a zombie apocalypse is a fairly unrealistic scenario, so I think it gives you a little more creative license for how much violence is acceptable. Another consideration is that the show is just pretty darn depressing. This isn't like a happy ending thing where the good guy wins and the bad guys are defeated. It's much grayer than that, so I think that's a bit harder on a kid who's watching. In the end, I'm going to say I would wait until age 15 to let my kids watch this show. As always, this may vary a bit depending on your kid, and you know them best. You can take a look at the scenes I showed here, which give you a pretty good idea of the kind of content you'll be getting into. And I want to reiterate, this is in no way a knock against the show. It's extremely well done, if not very depressing. It's definitely the best adaptation of a video game that I've ever seen, and I'm looking forward to the next season. It's just the reality here that to tell this story, it involves a whole lot of graphic violence. Well, let me know if you agree or disagree with my rating. This one was a bit tricky for me. Also, let me know if there are any other shows out there you'd like me to review. And don't forget to subscribe to see more reviews of what other shows, games, and more are okay for your kids. See you next time.